for Pete's sake. Okay, for the last time, I'm not going to take this stupid notebook. Quite frankly, I don't care whether bad people live or die. All I know is that killing them isn't going to solve anything. Heck, it might make things worse. So unless you want me to put a few dozen bullet holes in this thing, I suggest you take it back, or else... Blu-ray. Okay, I'll take a look at these, but I'm going to do it my way, get it? Can the guy enjoy his apple and... He took my apple! Hello my friends and welcome to Vav Anime and Games That Is Liaison Zone. Well, apparently some forces from beyond expect me to take a look at a certain popular Shonen Jump series, Death Note. For those who don't know, Death Note is the story about this mysterious little black book right here. The Death Note is used by the Shinigami, who are basically the Grim Reapers of Japanese mythology. It's a deadly little black book that kills off anyone whose name is written in it. Now, while I could review the series as a whole, I think a lot of people have already analyzed it, and if I discussed it, I'm not sure if I would be able to bring anything new to the table. No, I want to talk about something more polarizing, like the Warriors of Hope from my last review. You know, something that could get a good argument started. And then I realized, there's one thing that a lot of people tend to argue about when it comes to fiction. Whether or not an ending is good. When it comes to endings, there's a lot to discuss. Did Pip end up with Estella? Were Ozymandias' actions justifiable in any way? Was the top going to fall down? Everyone has their own interpretations and opinions, though the interesting thing about anime adapted from manga is that oftentimes, for various reasons, they end up with significantly different endings than their source material. As such, then you have to add on this question: which ending was better? Today's subject took it an extra step further with a third ending in live-action movie form. For that reason, I decided to start a new segment on the show discussing this topic. And thanks to a certain apple-stealing Shinigami, I now have all the tools I need for it. So, let's talk about a series whose ending comes in 3 different flavors, Death Note, as we dive into the new segment on the Liaison Zone, All's Well That Ends Well.
驚いたな。まさかとは思ったが、キラ、お前は直接手を下さずに人を殺せるのか。
Obviously, for a discussion like this, there's going to be a ton of spoilers, so if you're at all interested in picking up this series, let me just give you a spoiler-free summary first, and then you can stop this video and then check it out for yourself. Though, if you haven't heard about this series, then I have to ask, what rock have you been living under? I mean, not only is this a pretty popular series, it's also a pretty controversial series. I mean, it's been banned in parts of Asia because kids have been trying to recreate the titular little notebook. And while I do respect First Amendment rights, I can understand parents becoming concerned about their kids pretending they have a little notebook that instantly kills people. I mean, just imagine what you would do with that sort of power. You'd be able to pull off the perfect murder of someone who could be on the other side of the earth. You could become a person's judge, jury, and executioner without the usage of a fancy gun or even the need to leave your house at all. Personally, I want no part in it, but I can't say the same for this guy. Meet Light Yagami, one of the biggest escapist characters in all of anime. A young pretty boy who's so freaking smart and good at everything that he's become bored with life. So, he figures the only way to relieve his boredom is by using the Death Note to kill off most of the world's criminal population and become...
I will become the god of this new world.
I would normally make a sarcastic remark here, but after playing Danganronpa 2, All I can say is, I'm glad he didn't go with the alternative. Note to self, design scale that measures villainous insanity. Anyway, through his little journey towards supposed godhood, he's joined by the Shinigami who originally gave him the notebook, Ryuk. Together they have to deal with the police and a special task force who has caught on to his actions and have begun referring to him as the serial killer Kira. And like any good shonen series, Light has a strong rival he has to deal with. In fact, he has 3 of them, but more on that later. I'll say right now, I think this is a great manga series worth picking up. There's like a really reasonably priced box set that collects all of these books on Amazon right now. I mean, this series is really well written, has a lot of ingenious plot twists, and tons of thrills and suspense that'll just keep you on the edge of your seat. So let's get into it, Wit. So here's the basic setup. Halfway through the series, Light managed to work his way into the Japanese police force without any of them realizing that he's Kira. As such, he managed to take out his first major rival in the task force, L, and later got the opportunity to come face to face with L's successor, Nier. In the end, Nier managed to get the upper hand on Light and exposed him as Kira. In a last-ditch effort to take on Nier, he was denied it when one of his own guys shot a few bullets into him. Left with no other options, Light turned to Ryuk, asking him to use his personal death note to kill everyone. However, the only name he wrote in his book was Light's. Ryuk knew that Light had already lost, and no matter what he did, Light's fate had already been sealed. Not wanting to wait around for Light to slowly die in prison, or more likely was going to die of blood loss due to being shot several times, he sped up the process, thus ending Light's tale and the story of Death Note. This ending was extremely divisive, to say the least. Some people enjoyed it, while others outright hated it. Now, I am in the camp that thinks it's a good ending to an overall fantastic manga series, but yeah, I don't say it's great because I do agree with some of the criticisms about it, but I'll save my negatives for later. Instead, let's focus on what I liked about this ending first. Unlike some fans, most likely fangirls, I actually viewed Light's less than graceful death as a major positive. He needed to die if we wanted everything to come to a proper resolution. One of the unique things I really liked about this manga was how Light actually went in the exact opposite direction of most shonen manga protagonists by having the character decline instead of develop. As the story progressed, his morality degraded more and more until he had become pretty much the antithesis of what he was trying to become originally, a savior. It was fascinating to see how far this character that once had good intentions would fall. But when his time finally came and he was killed by my personal favorite character in this series, it was incredibly satisfying because we knew he had it coming. Seeing Light pretty much swim through a pool of his own blood in a dirty old warehouse pitifully trying to ask for help from people who were either dead or incapable of doing anything was delightful in a twisted way on it. To top it all off, while I'm not sure if this was intentional or not, this ending felt like it perfectly encapsulated the classic quote from T.S. Eliot's The Hollow Man. "This is the way the world ends, not with a bang, but with a whimper." Light had indeed achieved his new world, but it all ended in an instant, with his heart coming to a sudden and silent stop. It's just unfortunate that this sort of karmic ending was lost in the anime adaptation. The anime version of Death Note was produced by Madhouse, and it premiered just 5 months after the final chapter was published. It followed the manga fairly closely, up until the ending, and this point... Yikes! After a grand display like that, Light somehow managed to run out of the warehouse and somehow elude the police while passing by images of his past self. Eventually, he faints on some stairs where Ryuk again finishes him off by writing in his death note. Note to self, design WTF counter. Where do I even begin with this stupid ending? Alright, maybe I should start by explaining who this guy is. This is Mikami, a major follower of Light, whom he had tasked with killing the anti-Kira force. You see, he had made a contract with Ryuk that allowed him to see everyone's names. Unfortunately, his Death Note had been switched with a fake, and they managed to put the cuffs on him. Which leads into my first issue with this revised ending. What exactly did he stab himself with? I would think the task force would search him for any conventional weapons, but no, actually I think he stabbed himself with his pen by the looks of it. So, they didn't think to possibly remove the one writing tool on him that could literally spell their end. The term "the pen is mightier than the sword" never rang truer than here. Also, I'm not sure what kind of a pen he used, but somehow I have a hard time seeing it as a viable means of stabbing oneself. In fact, how was he able to bleed that much? Was he on the other side of that wall and Evil Dead 2? Speaking of bleeding, how was Light, despite being shot several times, able to get up and outrun the police for what seems like at least a few hours? He shouldn't have had the strength to even open the door, much less run for an extended period of time. In fact, why did Ryuk wait that long to write Light's name? I thought the whole point of using the Death Note was to speed up Light's death.
Here's a good idea. Have a point.
Oh god, this climax is so absurd. And yes, I get what they were trying to do here. They wanted to show Light possibly regretting his actions. You know, him thinking, what if he hadn't picked up the Death Note? Maybe he could have lived a perfectly healthy and normal life. Though, let me just ask you this. Where was the build-up to this? We never saw any signs of Light ever regretting his actions or thinking, I wonder if my life would have been better if I had never picked up that stupid notebook. No, as I said earlier, he had been under constant character decline, which then leads into my biggest point of contention. Why all the over-romanticizing? I admit, your mileage may vary on this depending on how much you respect the character, but for my money, I really did not think that Light, mass-murdering SOB Yagami deserved this kind of an over-glorified ending. Just the scene before, Nier rightfully demolished all pretensions that Light was a hero. He had become a monster who had killed many innocent people, betrayed those who had trusted him the most, and let those who loved him suffer and even die, all the while not even feeling an ounce of sympathy for any of them. Trying to make us feel sympathy for him at this point just feels completely forced and insincere. But you know, here's a thought to the anime staff. If you want to glorify Kira that much, why didn't you ever animate the manga's epilogue? Oh yeah, did I forget to mention? The manga included an epilogue that showed the formation of a cult that worshipped Light after his passing. It maintained the emotional weight of the ending proper while giving Light an appropriate send-off. But nope, the staff wasted their final episode by milking Light's final moments, for a lack of a better term, to death, with pointless mirages and... Misa? Yeah, this girl Misa, she was Light's lover, and apparently during the final episode she was committing suicide despite not knowing that her love was dying. I don't know, maybe this was a callback to a scene from the 25th episode where Misa for no reason got dressed in this really as all hell goth lowly dress to go out and start singing a disturbing little tune. Yeah, this scene was not in the original manga, and as such, had absolutely no bearing on the plot, came out of nowhere, and was never brought up again, until maybe now, if they were making a callback. Yeah, I guess it would qualify for this.
Big lived alligator moment!
Actually, now that I think about it, if they had removed this scene from the 25th episode, as well as another that was basically just fodder for the yaoi fanfic writers, and scaled the ending back down to the manga's original, then they would have had the episode space to animate the epilogue. This anime premiered 5 months after the manga had ended, and yet they still padded it out as though it were Dragon Ball or Bleach. I mean, not to that degree, but still, they padded it out and left an entire manga chapter out. You know what? For your guys' benefit, I'm just gonna give you a quick little review of this anime adaptation. While I thought overall it was a fairly competent adaptation, I also thought it had its moments where the animation staff really got overindulgent with what they could get away with.
Delete! Delete! Delete!
Now, some moments like the famous killing spree in the first episode were awesome, while others were so overblown and really just kind of stupid that they became some of the most annoying memes ever.
I'll take a potato chip and eat it.
Because of this anime, I don't even feel comfortable eating potato chips with my hand anymore. And unfortunately, these patterns of over-dramatizing is fairly common for this anime's director, Tetsuro Araki, and his staff. This group has done Death Note, High School of Dead, and some show about giant naked guys. I don't know if you guys have ever heard about it or anything, but the point is, Araki and company really tend to overblow their action scenes. And when they don't have enough action scenes, they just turn what were originally simple scenes into something out of 300. This anime staff really needs to learn the meaning of the word subtle. Also, am I the only one who thinks they have an unhealthy obsession with potatoes for some reason?
Hey, you there. What do you think you're doing? You are officially on my shit list! Just who the hell are you?
So yeah, I think the original manga ending is a lot better. But that doesn't mean I think the original is perfect either. What exactly are my problems with it? Well, let's first take a look at the live movie adaptation of this series, as it does actually address those very problems. Between the end of the manga and the premiere of the anime, Nippon Television released the first of 2 Death Note live-action movies. On a side note, the movie had some real talent in the cast, including the badass chairman of Iron Chef himself, Takeshi Kaga, as flight spotter Soichiro, and Light himself being played by Tatsuya Fujiwara, who had previously played Shuya Nanahara in the live-action adaptation of Battle Royale. Oh yeah, I should do a video about that later. Anyway, the first movie came out in June of 2006, and the second movie, called The Last Name, came just 4 months later in October to wrap things up. Obviously, they had to change a few things around, and of course, condense a lot of stuff since they only had 2 movies to work with. As a result, Light's End came a lot earlier in storyline during what were basically the events of the 7th volume of the manga, reworked with elements of the final story arc. At this point in the manga, Light's first major rival, L, would have died when another Shinigami named Ren wrote his name in the notebook. However, in the movie, L got around this by writing his own name in a Death Note. Now, at first that might sound really stupid, but the thing about the Death Note is that it also lets you decide how and when a person is going to die, as long as it's within 23 days after the entry into the book is made. Also, only first entries will take effect. Any future entries won't count. So all L needed to do was include the note to die in 23 days, and he could have enough time to wrap up the case. With that, L managed to play possum long enough to get Light to show his true colors in front of the Japanese police force, who were waiting in secret behind security cameras. From there, the climax played out similarly, with Light getting cornered, shot at, and eventually begging for help from Ryuk, only to have him write Light's name. The only differences being L was replacing Nier, Misa was replacing Mikami, and the final stage was a clean office building instead of a dirty old warehouse. Hey, look on the bright side, Light. At least you didn't have to crawl all over a floor that some homeless guy probably used as their toilet a few days ago. This to me was a far superior ending for Death Note than what was given to us in the manga for 3 main reasons. First, I think ending during the events of the 7th volume was a better place to stop, because after that, things got really complicated. You got the FBI, the President of the United States getting involved and getting killed off later on, as well as gangs headed by a secondary successor to L. All the while, Light has been manipulating the hapless Japanese police force into believing he's one of the good guys. It was like a 3-sided battle. It was a bit of a mess. I do agree with the majority that says that the second half of this series isn't quite as good as the first half. I mean, I don't think it's bad, just a bit rushed and contrived in areas. And I think I know why. Apparently from the beginning, Oba wanted his series to be exactly 108 chapters, so they could fit into a 12-volume series. You know, 12 like the 12 Apostles of Jesus Christ? Yeah. And when you have 12 and also add on this little guidebook here, you get a nice, lucky number 13, don't you? See how that works? But yeah, by setting such an arbitrary goal, he did end up right from the seat of his pants, he actually admitted to that. And it definitely showed in the ending. Second, I love the fact that Soichiro survived this adaptation. In the manga, he sadly died before the final act, not realizing his own son was the mass murderer he was looking for. Here though, not only was he able to see his son's true nature, he was able to deliver an awesome speech about the concept of justice, made even better thanks to the fact that, again, he was played by Chairman Kaga. Oh god, this guy is awesome. You know, he even played Soichiro in the Death Note musicals. Lastly, and most importantly, I thought it was much better to have L be the one to defeat Light instead of Nier, as that was probably the biggest problem myself and others had with the manga's original ending. L was great in that he was created as a foil for Light. His interactions with Light were some of the best moments in the story, as they had some great chemistry, and it really did feel like equals playing a fascinating little game of chess between one another. And while I didn't hate Nier as much as others probably did, I fully admit I thought he was an inferior replacement for L. From his appearance to his quirks, he felt like a younger, more immature version of L, and as a result, he had no real identity of his own other than being L Light. Combine that with nearly no interaction with Light until the final confrontation where he wore a ridiculous L mask, gives you a character that even the writer Tsugumi Oba admitted was unlikable. Heck, Oba himself admitted that killing off L was more of an editorial mandate. Don't we all love those? Actually, that would explain why a guy like L would make such critical mistakes like saying out loud that he was going to throw the book at any Death Note users right in front of the Shinigami who might be in cahoots with one of those users, which she was. Here, writing his own name in the Death Note was not only ingenious, but it also helped to define L's character. His methods of achieving justice might be questionable, but at the same time he has a dauntless resolve and was willing to sacrifice himself for those pursuits. And ultimately, that's what gave him the edge over Light. In the manga, Nier got the upper hand on Light mostly because Mikami got sloppy and exposed the location of the Death Note. The fact that L defeated Light by outwitting him and proving that he had the stronger resolve was a much more satisfying conclusion than having him win through what was basically luck. In the end, this movie was basically one big fix-fic, much like the Super Robot Tyson games. It addressed the issues the fans had with the original story, let certain characters survive, gave at least kind of happier endings to others, sort of, at least Soichiro didn't die, and it even expanded a little on characters like L and Soichiro. In fact, in the case of L, it left the gates open for him to have his own spin-off movie, but that's a topic for another day. Point is, I consider this to be unquestionably the best possible ending for Death Note. Again, I still recommend the original manga, but if you ever have the chance, check out the movies as well. While I'll admit the first movie was slow in areas, I still think it's well acted and if anything else worth watching just to get to the last name. Even as someone who was against condensing the first Danganronpa game into a 13-episode anime, I think they were able to change enough things around here that it became its own unique entity, and thus was able to stand on its own as a good film series. I might also recommend checking out the anime on down the line. Again, I don't think it's bad by any sense, and the over-dramatizing might not bother you as much as it does me, but I do think you'll be let down by the ending, especially if you read the original manga. So that's it for this new segment on the Asian Zone. If you liked it, let me know. I might do it for other series in the future that, other mangas that had different endings in their anime adaptations, or even their movie adaptations. For now though, oh yeah, I still have the stupid notebook in my possession. You really aren't going to take it back, are you? Alright, be that way. Just gonna have to do it like this. I thought I charged it this morning. Maybe he can help. See you next time.
ルン、ノート落ちたよ。
So, it's a notebook that can take lives by writing names in it.
That's the gist of it.
Sounds like something out of a manga.
It is, I'll lend it to you sometime. But first I was hoping you could send this little notebook into another dimension or something.
Well, if Spirals were to die in large numbers, it could upset the power balance in this universe. It should be disposed of immediately.
Glad to hear it.
So, where is it?
Oh, it's right over there on the coffee table. It's gone!
Maybe the original owner reclaimed it?
Maybe.
But still, something doesn't feel right. This intense feeling of despair. It's not the anti-mans. It feels like something much worse.